Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Mario Cristobal, the Miami Hurricanes, a monster week one win against Notre Dame. And hey, the national media having a field day with this one, as they should. I think Miami immediately has put themselves in the conversation of, hey, not just a college football playoff team. Like, this is a team that can bang with anybody in the country when it comes to competing for a national championship. And a lot of the conversation early on from this game going to Carson Beck. You see in Malachi Toney's, we knew a lot of the Miami fans who've been rocking with the boys for a while. We knew Malachi Toney was going to be a household name. It was more just a matter of when. Certainly had that kind of game Sunday night. Now, look, two massive storylines, and we're going to talk about those storylines for the next couple of days. I want to start, though, the Corey Hetherman defense. I was really impressed, especially during the first three quarters of this football game. I think to a lot of Miami Hurricane fans that follow this program 12 months of a year, we kind of knew the offense was going to score. You got the best offensive line in the country. You got a quarterback in Carson Beck that we've seen. He's put it on film that he's one of the best quarterbacks in the country when he's playing his best football. He certainly did Sunday night against Notre Dame. Really deep and talented stable of running backs. Not sure we're all that surprised that this offense had some success. I think the bigger storyline for a lot of Miami fans in terms of, hey, can this team compete for a national championship, was how big of a step has this defense taken with Corey Hetherman? I think we got our answer week one against Notre Dame. Now, let's just start with this. Hey, this is a Notre Dame offense that last year was a top 10 offense in scoring in the country. I have a ton of respect for what Mike Denbrock does on the offensive side of the football as the offensive coordinator. Just thought this defense kind of, let's just be frank about it. The most lopsided matchup that we saw in this football game was this Miami Hurricanes defensive line against the Notre Dame offensive line that many think is going to be one of the best in the country. And I thought Miami's defensive line dominated all game, not only stopping the run, but also getting after the passer as well. I mean, you just look at it broadly and say you forced 2 turnovers. You only have 9 missed tackles, which when you're trying to tackle Jadarian Price and Jeremiah Love, 9 missed tackles ain't all that bad. You only bust 1 coverage in the back end for a brand new secondary against an offensive coordinator, Mike Denbrock, that's going to throw a lot of different things at you. It was really hard to not be satisfied with what we saw from this defense. And again, what I'll say here is I think it only gets better. 2025, I think the best football for a lot of these guys on defense is ahead of them. That was one of my biggest takeaways too. Want to take a little bit more of a deep dive in terms of what we saw from this Miami Hurricanes defense before we get into it. As always, to the Miami Hurricane fans, appreciate you guys. We did a instant reaction Sunday night, and the amount of support this fan base continues to show to the boys continues to be amazing. Appreciate you guys. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. And hey, much more importantly, would love to hear, a couple of days after, how we feeling about this Miami team going into 2025, because I'm looking at not only what we saw from Miami Sunday night, but I'm looking at what Clemson looked like against LSU. I'm looking at what Alabama looked like against Florida State. I'm looking at what Texas looked like and say, hey, a lot of the other teams that we kind of deemed as teams that were ahead of Miami heading into the 2025 year, Miami flat out looked like a better football team than a lot of teams across the country. And my perception of Miami has changed from, hey, college football playoff team, I thought they were. I wasn't sure if they were national championship contenders. After week one, it's hard to not start thinking about this team as a legitimate national championship contender throughout the rest of 2025. Look, if there's one like bone to pick, and I guess we'll get the bone to pick right out of the way, is just you want to see more killer instinct on both sides of the football for Miami. I felt like Miami saw themselves as an underdog trying to hold on to the football game in the fourth quarter. And I'm looking at him saying, you dominated the first 3 quarters of this football game. Why are you changing how you play in the fourth? Now, if you were the underdog, you weren't the best team, and you had some things go your way, and that's why you had a lead, maybe I understand it. You were clearly the better football team for the first 3 quarters of this game. Why are we changing how we do things in the fourth quarter when we have a 2-score lead? I want to see them step on the throat. And I think as you continue to win these kind of games and see yourself as one of the best teams in the country, maybe that killer instinct gets a little bit more developed. It's really the only bone to pick in this football game because the first 3 quarters, I mean, I thought Miami was comfortably the better football team on the field. Number one thing I learned from the defense, the run fits were really, really good. And I think you have to give a shout out to 2 different position groups. Number one, the linebackers. Mo Torre, that run stopping ability that we expected from Mo Torre, I thought you certainly saw in that football game. I think you can say the same thing for Wesley Bissaint. I think you can say the same thing for a guy like Popo Aguilar as well. I thought he played a very, very good football game as well. Linebackers were really consistent. I mean, the fact that Notre Dame only had 1 carry that went for 20 plus yards, that's telling us that our linebackers are making the right run fits. And when they have the opportunity to make plays, they're making plays, right? I mean, it's just an explosive Notre Dame running back room. And the fact that they only had 1 carry that went for 20 plus tells me the run fits were good. It starts with the linebackers. You have to give flowers to how David Blay, Ahmad Moden, Justin Scott, Ruben Bain, and Akeem Mesidor were. This is a defensive line that we knew the defensive line was good last year. They were sloppy against the run. I thought this defensive line was elite at knockbacks, eating up double teams, fitting the run the right way. Hey, when you're an off-ball linebacker, your job gets a heck of a lot easier when you're playing behind a defensive line that's winning at the point of attack. You saw that all game. David Blay was the name in the run game that I thought was just really, really disruptive. Ruben Bain's also, nobody talks enough about how good Ruben Bain is in the run. His effort level, his ability to set edges, it's really good. And quite frankly, you can say the same thing for Akeem Mesidor as well. I thought this defensive line was phenomenal fitting the run along with the linebackers. That's number one. We saw a lot of missed tackles and a lot of sloppy run fits last year. We didn't see that from this Miami Hurricanes front seven Sunday night against Notre Dame. Number two, this pass rush, it wrecked the game for Notre Dame. Like, hey, why was CJ Carr named the starting quarterback for Notre Dame? They wanted to push the ball down the field. Said, hey, we think we got a quarterback that can push it. We think we got wide receivers that can win on the outside. We're going to name CJ Carr our starting quarterback because we want to be a little bit more present pushing the ball down the field. They couldn't. They just couldn't hold up in pass protection. 31% of CJ Carr's dropbacks, pass attempts in this football game, they were screens. Well, what does that tell you? What it tells me is, hey, they didn't feel like they could hold up in pass protection. And we saw that, especially as CJ Carr took the field to try to go tie the game late in the game, right? When it was obvious pass rush situations, these tackles could not block Ruben Bain. They could not block Akeem Mesidor. Thought Ahmad Moten was extremely disruptive in the middle of that defensive line as well. We kind of talked about that heading in. Notre Dame's offensive line is good, especially blocking in the run game. We saw at times last year these tackles struggle against elite caliber edge rushers. Well, guess what? Miami's got that. Ruben Bain and Akeem Mesidor, I think they're both elite, especially Ruben Bain. They dominated this football game. I mean, you kind of took away the downfield passing attack. You largely took it away with what you could do rushing the passer. Ruben Bain was the best. Hey, look, Jeremiah Love's really, really good. Ruben Bain was comfortably the best football player on the field on both sides of the football in this football game. Pass rush was a massive, massive storyline in this one. How about this? The secondary, specifically Keontae Scott, he had bad one run fit. Jadarian Price ran for 30 yards. Outside of that, Keontae Scott was targeted 6 times in this football game, gave up 1 catch. You thought he did some really good things in the run game as well. That's a very, very tricky position in terms of playing that nickel back spot, especially against Notre Dame, because you're going to have some tricky matchups. I mean, Keontae Scott was dealing with what we thought was Notre Dame's best pass catcher. That's Jaden Greathouse. You didn't hear Jaden Greathouse's name one time on the broadcast, and I thought that was largely because Keontae Scott did a very good job taking him away. Then was present in the run game as well. I think it started with Keontae Scott, and then on the outside, like OJ Frederick got beat by Malachi Fields on that, and that's just like tip your cap to Malachi Fields. Malachi Fields made a phenomenal play on that football. OJ Frederick played it about as good as you could. I thought OJ Frederick was nails. I thought Damari Brown was really good in this football game. Xavier Lucas was solid as well. I mean, you got guys on the boundary in the secondary room. This is a position group that we knew from a personnel standpoint was a lot different. We expected it to be a lot better. We knew it was going to be a challenge against some Notre Dame wide receivers that I'll say this again. I think Notre Dame's wide receivers pretty dang good. I thought Miami was up for it on the outside. And now that you know that you have trust with these defensive backs, play a little bit more man coverage. You can start changing the picture a little bit more within the front seven, maybe even bringing some pressure packages. I don't think you need to blitz all that often when you have a guy like Ruben Bain coming off the edge. Probably should shout out Marquise Lightfoot too as a pass rusher. Thought he did some good things. When you can stop the run like Miami did, and then you can get after the passer like Miami showed they can, you become such a hard defense to deal with. And I thought that's what Miami showed against Notre Dame. And I think you got the cornerbacks and the guys in the secondary that you have some confidence with as well. Safeties won't be a problem. I know there were a lot of Miami fans that were disappointed with, I guess you could say, settling for Jacoby Thomas when we wanted AJ Halsey. Thought Jacoby Thomas was just fine in that football game. Look, is Jacoby Thomas going to be an All-American safety? I don't know. I thought he was dang solid. Like everything Miami was looking for when you brought in a veteran safety like Jacoby Thomas, I thought you got in that football game. Remaining questions on the defense side of the football. I think I got two. One, what's the impact that Hayden Lowe can bring eventually for this football team? And more importantly than that, the depth in the middle of that defensive line. Miami got away with a three-man rotation, right? Ahmad Moten, David Blaine, Justin Scott. Those were the only three interior defensive linemen that played in this football game. Is that sustainable throughout 2025? Especially when you start getting into the conversation of, hey, I kind of expect this team to compete not just for a playoff spot, for a national championship. Probably want to find another body or two. Whether that's Artavius Jones, whether that's true freshman Donta Simpson, you are looking to find a couple of more bodies that you think you can rotate in a football game. That doesn't mean you're not playing David Blaine, Ahmad Moten, and Justin Scott. And here's the other thing is that, Miami, they have an offense that can dominate the time of possession with how they run the football. And Miami dominated the time possession the first three quarters of that game. Kind of got away from them in the fourth quarter. But in the first three quarters, like this defense wasn't on the football field that much. The three scoring drives for touchdowns that Miami had, like those were imposing drives that took up almost dang near half a quarter. That's the recipe. And that's a way to protect some maybe thin numbers that you have on the defensive line, because these guys don't have to play that much football because your offense is staying on the field the whole dang game. That's probably the last remaining question. Like, can we find another name or two that we trust in the middle? And again, I think maybe Armando Blunt can make it work as a three tech. Maybe even Hayden Lowe or Akeem Mesidor if need be. I think you want to make sure you keep your best football players where they're at their best. And I think that's clearly Ruben Bain and Akeem Mesidor coming off the edge. Really, really impressive. And again, Carson Beck is going to get a lot of the national media attention. And I thought he was very sharp in this football game. And we will talk plenty about Carson Beck. I think this defense is going in the right direction. And I think it has the opportunity to get a lot better too. We'll close it out there. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. We'll talk to y'all later. Peace.